ice is dropped in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm back. It was a long day of travel, but back on the ground again after a disappointing night, to say the least, in Mexico. Atlanta United 3-0 losers at Monterrey. Lots of stuff to get into. Lots of reactions to get to. I know there were lots of reactions after the game. I know there's been lots of reactions today. I have been following on Twitter and watching the toxicity continue to rise because that's where we're at. We've got kind of a cast of all kinds of characters tonight. It's a little bit of soccer over there with Nick Alifi joining in. What's up, Nick?
Man, I need some help, guys. I need some help. I don't know. Other than that, I'm as good as can be expected.
Jarrett Smith is chiming in from a park, I believe.
About to head to the park, building a snack right now for the Ivy board. So,
all right.
in the time it took us to do this intro, by the way, Pity Martinez was fouled 6 more times.
Yeah, and there wasn't a yellow card for it either.
Nope. Not. If you ask for one, you're going to get one for dissent.
Yeah, maybe. And you also hear the laughter of John Nelson, who is in a car.
Cackle.
Yes, in a car because of the individual who listened to the show from India earlier in the week. She is set to land at the world's busiest airport, so we are acting chauffeur.
Yeah, it was busy a few hours ago because I was there, and customs took a while. That was loads of fun after the flight. It was a crazy travel experience because Monterrey's airport has a curfew that you can't take off out of there after a certain time. So not possible to get back immediately after the game last night, and then it's trying to fit into the schedule at the world's busiest airport, finding a runway where you can set the plane down and all that stuff. So, it was a long, long day after a long night last night with that result. I've talked about it a couple times now on the radio, and I haven't talked to you guys. So I know, Nick, your time's a little limited. Let's start with you. Watching it last night, what's your reaction?
Just total frustration. When you look at the numbers, Atlanta United had 52% possession, 366 passes, 75% pass accuracy, but it doesn't change the fact that we held them for a massive chunk of the game. There was, some LGP buffoonery that caused that penalty. I'm sorry that he was out of position, and you can call it a soft penalty, a weak penalty. You lift your arm in the box, it's going to get called. But at the 80th minute, everything fell apart. And to me, it would be so easy to sit there and say, yes, but we held our own for 80 minutes, and that was great. And to walk out, we all said walk out with a 1-0 loss would be fantastic. But it all fell apart. And for me, the frustration comes in not recognizing that you need to make changes earlier. You have a tired squad. A sub 1-2 guys in there make the difference. To sub at 90 minutes, to me, gave me shades of Italy's World Cup qualification when Italy needed to score against Sweden. And Ventura goes and tries to get De Rossi, who's a defensive midfielder, off the bench. And De Rossi has a mutiny on the sideline. Like, we need goals. Why in God's name are you calling it a defensive midfielder? To me, that was the most frustrating part. Time is a luxury. And Atlanta United, if you want to compete in CONCACAF Champions League, don't have that luxury for system integration and for team bonding and chemistry. It's just not there. So now it's the focus on the Open Cup, or, a miracle for leg 2, then the Open Cup in the regular season. And I hope the fan base hangs in.
Well, the fan base has to hang in, and this is something that has come up a few times. I think the reaction today shows that the fan base is going to hang in. I'm not worried about that at all, to be perfectly honest, because if they weren't going to hang in, they wouldn't be so upset today. I think that's the case. Now, this is different, and the way that I've looked at this season, I'm not lumping everything together just yet. I'm looking at each match individually because I think there are things out of each that need to be discussed. Last night definitely was a different kind of match than the first three, and we'll get into some of the differences. The first goal, Nick, was interesting because, I mean, our angle was to the right of the main TV camera, but pretty low. I mean, it was an unbelievable booth at the Estadio BBVA Bancomer. Just a great stadium, great booth. And at halftime, they were showing the highlights that they were sending back, and they had a great slow-mo of the penalty. And I'm totally with you, and I said it on the broadcast. You extend your arm and you get caught extending your arm that way, more often than not, the penalty is going to get called. A couple things that were interesting about it. So first off, the referee didn't call it initially. He did not blow his whistle. He checked with the AR. He looked at the AR, then blew the whistle. That was something that was a little frustrating because he wasn't quite sure of it. He didn't really sell it, and that's something that can drive you crazy. Second, when you see that replay, and that slow-mo replay especially, the arm's extended, and that's why the call was made. The contact was as minimal as it gets. It was, I don't know if he made contact with his extended hand on Pabon. Pabon felt a touch and sold it and got the call. And this is a Monterrey squad that had 2 penalties in the second leg of the Alianza series. You ask fans around Mexico, and they're going to tell you that Monterrey gets a lot of calls. They're very good at getting those calls, and they make them count. And Nicolas Sanchez was the leading scorer for the team in the Apertura off free kicks and penalties, and he's got a couple penalties in CONCACAF Champions League now. It was an interesting one in that regard. I thought it was a bad call, but when you get that arm extended, whether you make a lot of contact or not, generally, it's going to get called. It's just going to get called. That's just how it is. And the referee, I don't think either he didn't have a good view of it or he wasn't sure of it. The AR, more than likely, because he's on that far side, he sees that arm extended. Then he says, yeah, blow the whistle. And it was blown.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. When we talk about the official, we can't get around that. We can talk about it, Atlanta's poor play up top in the attacking third, and that's 100% justified. But when you look at 26 fouls committed, only 2 yellow cards issued. 10 of those fouls came against one of your players, and yet only 2 yellow cards issued. Atlanta 15 fouls, and you had 3 yellow cards. So clearly there's an issue here, and I'm not saying that people were paid or it was bribery.
No.
I'm not saying anything like that. But what I am saying is that level of inconsistency, that is a problem that CONCACAF has to solve. There's no reason why one of your players should be hacked to death on the field in front of God and everybody, and only have 2 yellow cards come out of it. That's my take before we toss to someone else.
Yeah, the fact that one player for Monterrey committed 10 fouls and didn't see a yellow card is absolutely mind-blowing. I have been doing this for 2 seasons now and into a third, and I do not remember ever seeing a player pick up 10 yellow cards in a match, period. I believe Lucy Rushton tweeted out last night that it was the most yellows in a match. If it had been an MLS match, it would have been the most yellows in a match since Opta started tracking it. I mean, it's at least 5 years. It's crazy. And to not see a yellow, if you're Monterrey and you're worried about Pity Martinez hurting you and you're not getting yellows, yeah, keep fouling him at midfield. It's a smart play. It's a smart decision. Jarrett, let's move to you. What were your reactions about last night?
Well, first of all, don't go after Nick on this, anybody, because if there's anybody on this, in this world that I can think of who would be sensitive to the idea of the refs are cheating, Paul, it's going to be the guy who follows Italian soccer the way Nick does. So that's not the guy to go. Don't try and catch the fade from Nick on this one. Man, it was there for 80 minutes. You had one of these softer penalties you'll see, and it was as far. I mean, I don't think it was. You can call it classified quote unquote a dive because there was contact. It was soft as hell though. Did stick his arm out, and it was a couple of just individual things, even stuff that didn't result in goals. There's one after that where Monterrey plays a diagonal ball into the box on the ground, and it gets redirected, it just goes wide of the post, and Mikey was 2 steps behind on it, and it was just these individual moments that had me like going, oh God, and okay, we got out of that one, and I'm thinking, okay, you made it through 70 some odd minutes of this. It's 1-0 on a goal that came from a questionable, a questionable penalty call, and Jesus H Christ, y'all realize Brad got a fingertip on that ball before I read another damn comment about he wasn't even close. He guessed right. He got a fingertip to it. He just got blasted. Good God, some of y'all look for reasons to get mad at the damn man. Not even Bill Hamid. But seriously, no. The first thing I see is Brad Guzan wasn't even close to it. Y'all, he guessed right. He got fingers to it.
Yeah, he got a touch to it.
It was struck like hell. I ain't mad at it. It's a hard thing to stop. But I digress on that one. I mean, you give up 2 late goals where you're tired. The foul calls were just hilarious at a certain point. At one point, PT gave a piggyback ride for a good 5 to 10 yards to a guy. That one was amazing. Like, he had the man beat, so he just jumped on his back and just rode him down into the ground. He just rode PT into the ground. My one regret is that Eric Remedi, Taylor Tolman has ruined me. My one regret is that Remedi used his yellow card early, and you lose that guy who, he's not an enforcer in the same. He's not your Zdeno Chara out there being the enforcer, but he's more than capable, and we've seen it in other competitions, especially in Argentina, that he's willing to go in there and crack skulls. He had to play very carefully, and you look at Atlanta drawing 2 yellow cards last night on things that didn't seem nearly as egregious. They had to play the game that that they drew, and they drew a game where it felt like at times they were being treated differently on discipline, and sometimes that just happens. And it's going to feel like in those situations, I think, that everything is going against you, whether it is or whether it is not. But it certainly can feel that way, and I don't blame them for being frustrated. And then especially you after all of that, it's still 1-0, and then it just isn't. And then it's 2-0, and then it's 3-0. And
yeah. John,
great game to watch. You had you had a great shot at you had the Breck-Shea break in, but no, that doesn't matter because the AR raised his flag 5 minutes late because offsides is a construct that doesn't believe in time and space.
Yeah, he was offside though, and he missed.
He was, and he was offside, and he missed. I get it, but good gravy, man! Raise the flag ahead of time next time.
Yeah, you didn't have VAR to deal with, so yes, put the flag up and do your job and all that stuff because it was an issue last night, and we'll get into that in a minute. John, your reactions from last night?
Frustrated, obviously, for a lot of the reasons that have been previously discussed. Usually, I know this will come as a shock to folks, but when I'm in office, when I'm in office HD. And watching a match and an event happens, and then the first word out of my mouth is an expletive on a downstroke, that just kind of personified the frustration of the evening. The refereeing inconsistency, and that's how I'll phrase it, was, for me, it was you knew that it exists, and it just so happened last night the 10 no card fouls on PT were the one that sticks out in my mind, obviously. And there were moments in the first 15, ball hits the crossbar, and Atlanta United escapes, and you're sitting there saying, okay, they've gotten past that one stretch. I think it was like from 11 to 14 or 11 to 15 where Monterrey got on Atlanta United and tried to get that early goal. Then to your point about the penalty, yes, it was sold, but when you raise your arm and you kind of give a bit of a forearm shiver, and it was soft, no doubt about it. But once again, you raise your arm trying to keep someone from getting their job done inside the box. That's what's going to happen. It was sold. It happened. And I guess the general frustration, there were moments in the second half specifically, where you could see that Atlanta United was getting possession and gaining some sort of control. But it looked like, for me, roughly in the 80th, that was when I think Atlanta United hit the wall. And you would have liked to possibly seen some kind of defensive reinforcement at that point to make sure that, say, 70 or 75, that you're getting out of there at 1-0. But as it turns out, you don't, and it gets to 2. And then it gets to 3 off of the back post again. But, the second goal, which was an absolute rocket off the left foot, tremendously played, well done. But, I'd anticipated something akin to a 5-4-1 if we're pinning things down to numbers. But frustrating night. Would have liked to have gotten out of there at 1-0, but now it's a Herculean effort coming back on Wednesday. But, you're not going to have LGP, and you're not going to have Remedi. So that's going to present some...
You are going to have Remedi.
Oh, you are going to have Remedi? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I think that there's going to be some interesting lineup thoughts for both Sunday and for Wednesday going forward. But, it's a learning experience on a bunch of different levels, and welcome to hemispheric competition.
Yeah, I mean, Champions League is difficult, and there's nothing to compare to it. You don't play matches like last night in Major League Soccer. You don't. You don't play teams with 14 players with international experience. Atlanta United has as many, current and former internationals as any team in MLS, and Monterrey had twice as many. I mean, you're talking about a club that's too deep across the board. As big of an advantage as Atlanta United has at times with the value of their roster and how much they spend in MLS, Monterrey outspends Atlanta by a healthy margin. It's a tough challenge. That's why I look at last night's game in a different context than DC and the first leg against Herediano. It's a different match. People who are upset about you didn't get a bunch of shots last night, you were never getting a bunch of shots last night. You take last year's team flying on all cylinders down to Monterrey in a competitive match, you're not getting a lot of shots. Flat out. Monterrey's a good team. At home, they're a team that doesn't concede much of anything. They've lost one game since the Apertura opened up last fall. They're on a run of 5 straight clean sheets now. You're not getting many chances. Flat out, you can play a great match and you're not getting many chances. That's one thing to keep in mind here. 2, the way the game was called. I hate to harp on referees because the referee had nothing to do with goal 2 or goal 3. The first goal, it's a soft penalty. It's early too. It's a frustrating one. But you get that arm extended. The AR sees it. It's going to happen more often than not. Fine. The way the game was called, the fact that Monterrey was able to break up every single time Atlanta United tried to generate possession through midfield. Pitti was fouled 10 times, but he's not the only one. Eric Remedi, one of your main ball handlers in the middle of the field, fouled 4 times. Barco fouled 4 times. Breck Shea down the left fouled 3 times. Joseph he had 23 touches. He was fouled twice. That's a problem that you're able to break up play that way and not see yellows for persistent infringement. Leandro Gonzalez-Perez commits 2 fouls, gets a yellow, suspended for the second leg. Incredibly, incredibly frustrating in that regard. You have to deal with the match that's in front of you, though. And I thought Atlanta United, for the most part, from minute 1 to minute 75, dealt with the match pretty well. Not great. You had some breakdowns. You recovered. But you were okay. You were 1-0 in. Halftime, I felt like that was the time to bring on Tito Villalba for Ezequiel Barco. My opinion, I'm not in training every day. I don't know what's been worked on. I don't know where players are. I don't know who's getting what. I thought the way that game was turning, you weren't going to see as much possession in the second half, and ended up being just over 50% to Atlanta. And it was pretty consistent half to half. I felt like you weren't going to see a whole lot of the ball, so take a guy like Barco out who wants a lot of the ball, bring on Tito who can make something out of nothing, see what you get. Because it's not going to change anything dramatically, but it might give you a sliver in the final third. I was leaning that way. Early part of the second half, I was really leaning that way because I thought Monterrey kind of grabbed the match early in the second half. But, and I didn't expect this because I thought Atlanta was hitting that wall earlier. They fought back, and I give that team on the field a ton of credit to bounce back when Monterrey had them on the ropes early in the second half to put Monterrey on the ropes. Go back and look at some little things. Defending corners, for example. Monterrey dropped everybody into the 18. They started dropping more players back defensively because Atlanta was starting to threaten. PT was starting to get loose and finally avoid getting fouled 5 times on the same play. He was starting to get loose and create a little bit. You were starting to see some hope for Atlanta in the attacking half. Now, it didn't lead as many chances as it should have, but you were seeing Monterrey have to react to that. And they did. And they changed the game in about the 75th minute or so. That's where I was worried, okay, you're at 1-0 right here. I don't know if you're going to be able to finish just only conceding 1 with the way things are. You give up the second goal. And this is something that I don't think has been talked about enough. You give up the second goal there in the 80th minute. It's a great goal. There was multiple breakdowns on it. Everybody just dropped deeper and deeper and deeper because you're hitting that wall. You're running out of gas. You drop deeper. You give Pabon that chance. He's deadly from zone 14. He's deadly from that part of the field. He hurts you with a great goal. Okay. Different game now. At 1-0, you can gamble a little bit and think, you know what, we might get something going the other way. Pitti might have a moment of magic. He might be able to spring Joseph. They're just not quite syncing up. Couple good passes. Joseph made a different run. Joseph made a good run. Didn't receive it. Okay, 1-0, you can roll with this. 2-0, I don't think you can at that point because I'm already worried about the legs falling off. At 2-0, I think it's time to completely drop 5-4-1, sit back, and defend at all costs and get out of there at 2. Because if you're coming back to Mercedes-Benz Stadium 2-0 down, how much of a different feel is that than what it is right now at 3? 2-0? Not great. You gave up a goal late. You would have liked to have seen it at 1, but 2? You could see this team scoring 2 goals at home, even against a good team in Monterrey. You could see it happening. 3? It's a different conversation. The third goal is the one you cannot concede. And that's the stuff. Go ahead.
I think it was Ives Galarcep who brought it up, talking about the parallel between that game last night and the Red Bulls game in Atlanta in the Eastern Conference Final first leg, where New York was down 2-0, and instead of packing it in and trying to take that 2-0 back to Red Bull Arena, they went for it and got burned by Tito for that third goal that just seemed to break that series.
Yeah, and that's managing a series. It's managing 180 minutes. I was really surprised that you didn't see, and it's not about the sub to me. I mean, I would have went to the bench earlier. I kind of thought it was needed, but the mentality is the bigger issue at that point. And I don't know how that went because we're not on the field. We don't hear the instructions that are being given. We don't know if the instruction was sit back and get out of here with what we have. Just sit deep, defend. And it just didn't work. Or the legs were gone. Because you started to see at that point Breck Shea getting outrun down the left, Eric Remedi getting outrun. It just, you didn't have the same legs. And Monterrey brought on smart substitutions to go for the match. And they did. And they got it right.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about earlier, is that when you start seeing those telltale signs that, hey, look, player X is getting burned by a half step here, 2 steps now, 3 steps now. Okay, we got to make a change. And to me, there's so much we can look at and just say, okay, this is part of the game. You're in a tough environment against a really good team. Results like this happen. That I can buy. But as the manager, the one thing that is directly in your control is when you use substitutions to try to change the game. And if you want to make that transition, Jason, like you were talking about, where you do want to go to that true five in the back, that's great. Then make some substitutions to make that happen. And then say, hey, look, we're going to bunker, and if we get a shot to counter, we counter. But other than that, we're just sitting tight. To me, that was the most frustrating part, is that it wasn't like this happened in an instant, like it was some gamma ray burst from Monterrey that led them to this moment. It was something where you could see the lag happening, and there was nothing done. To me, that's the irrational fan in me that like John said, just causes you to drop an expletive. When I saw Tito and Marinowitz get up, that's when I dropped my expletive. I was like, okay, now. But to me, that's something that Frank is going to learn from this. He's not going anywhere. For all of for those few who are posting to bore out, be patient, please. And if you are gainfully employed, I imagine you would certainly be less than thrilled if after one or two screw ups, people start posting around the office your name out. So let's give Frank a little bit of time, but this is something he's going to learn from. Just like Tata tried saying, hey, this is the way we're going to play. This is option A. This is all we're going to do. And then even Tata Martino said, okay, I've got to tweak some things. I got to shift some things around to try to be more competitive. This will happen with Frank. I don't think that he's, looking at this with a biblical, lockdown view of this is the one way things will be done. I think there will be tweaks, but guys, I'm interested to see what kind of tweaks happen between now and Sunday. So if you guys want to throw anything out there on that, but this is some tweaks and changes have to be made.
Yeah, Sunday's tricky because Alyssa Martin asks about the lack of squad rotation, and that plays into Sunday. So you want to have these guys play together to get it right. You want to have them look more like they did in Kennesaw than they have in any of the other matches. You want them to play to be able to get there. But we all have limits in how much you can play. You can't go like this throughout. And last night, to me, was the first time that you really started to look tired. I hadn't seen that in the previous matches. That last night, late final 15, you started to see it. Real quick, before we move on to that, you look back at the substitutions from Monterrey, and we're going to talk about the Monterrey match as a match, and we've done that mostly so far. We're going to talk about the issues in that match, because that match is not the DC match. It's not the Herediano match. It's its own match, and it's against an opponent that is very different than the rest. Far different opponent than Cincinnati coming up. There are issues that happen in that match that are not necessarily the same as what happens in other matches. Keep that in mind. But you look at the substitutions that Diego Alonso made, Monterrey's manager. 65th minute, he brings in Celso Ortiz, pulls out Jonathan Gonzalez. He's reinforcing the holding midfield because that's when Atlanta was in a good run of form and starting to hurt Monterrey. And Monterrey didn't want to concede. So you replaced, it's like for like, but you're reinforcing the middle part of your field. 71st minute, Alonso made a pretty bold sub. He brought in Rodolfo Pizarro, pulled out Aviles Hurtado. Hurtado was looking dangerous in the first half. He was nothing in the second half. Pizarro, attacking player, he'd started, I think, the last 3 or 4 matches. He came in and brought a spark, and that sub really helped turn it. When Atlanta had grabbed the momentum, the Pizarro sub, once he got in and got, kind of ingrained into the team, that's when the match turned. That's when you have to start thinking, okay, what's different here? What do I need to change? And it didn't happen. The second goal is the one where I thought you had to make a sub there. I just thought, even if it's as much to get everybody to slow down and stop and reset, if it's a like for like, if that's where you bring on Tito for Barco, just to give everybody a minute, fine. If that's where you bring in Jeff for one of the attacking players to sit deeper and make it a true 5-3-1-1 or whatever you want to call it. and just sit deeper and defend. Cool. I think that's the one where the game and the series is on its edge. And I think that's a good shout, Jarrett, about the callback to the Red Bull series, because it's what Chris Armas didn't do. At 2-0, he made the decision to go for it, and it wasn't on. Here in this one, there wasn't a change, and I think that was where something was needed, some kind of spark. If it's just a different person, if it's just some fresh legs, something's needed there. And you go back to Alyssa's question about the lack of squad rotation. This was a big topic in the fall of 2017. With all the games at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and Tata Martino played the same lineup, and we kept expecting somebody to sit, and they didn't. You have to have guys play to get better, and I get it at this point right now. Frank de Boer's not happy with the way the play is. I mean, he shouldn't be. They're not creating enough chances, flat out. So you want guys to play. You want them, as much as they can, to figure it out and problem solve. And you have to do that in matches. You can't do that in training sessions. You have to do that in matches. So you have to give these guys a long leash to try to figure that out. This was the one where I think it showed, okay, the leash is breaking and things are falling apart. And now it's time to, all right, it's not where it needs to be, but I don't know if Michael Parkhurst is ready to go on Sunday. I don't know where Eric Remedi, Darlington Nagbe's legs are. I think LGP plays on Sunday because he's not playing on Wednesday. I think that's a very safe bet. Is Pity Martinez able to go, from the start on Sunday? You'd love for him to, because when you're in the situation of a new manager and a new system and you're trying to build something, John, how many times do we see this with new coaches, whatever the sport, when things are struggling as they're coming in, and you get that big win and you have some success and everybody is then re-energized. You'd love to have that on Sunday, and it's a prime opponent to do it. Yep. But you're going to have to rotate the squad some because just flat-out energy and the travel and all of it. I mean, it's draining at the moment, and I think you're not going to be able to get that great feeling moment with this starting 11 that we've seen this season, because you're going to have to rotate some new faces in on Sunday.
Right, and for me, I was going to ask the point that you actually just reinforced before I got the chance to ask the question.
I'm psychic.
Yes, you are. And that's the beauty of doing a show for 2+ years. When you have a new coach with a tweaked system and, new personnel in certain places and personnel doing things that they weren't doing previously, how much is it having them try to get more acquainted with each other, sort things out, get it all squared away? And that was why I have not had an issue with the starting 11s or the 18s being the way that they are, because Frank de Boer has an idea and he wants the 11 players out there, or the 18 on any given day, to sit there and try to figure out how to make things get to full song. And you can't do that if you're having squad rotation. But now you have to. I mean, do we see Alec Can on Sunday? Because you know that you're going to have Brad Gazan in net on Wednesday against Monterrey in Champions League. What does the back line look like? There are going to be questions. Jeff Lorenowitz is probably going to be getting a start, and start Sunday if not Wednesday. So you're going to be seeing these bodies. Romario getting some reps in there somewhere. Carlton possibly getting reps in there somewhere. So that's where we are at this point. Is you're going into a stretch now with 3 matches in 8 days, 3 matches in 7, with Cincinnati and Monterrey and Philadelphia. You're going to have to see this now, just because you've gotten to the point to where in the 80th minute, I think it's safe to say that the hood came up and you saw steam coming out of the engine. It's time now.
Yeah, it's a tough spot on Sunday, because it is the home opener. It's a moment of celebration in a lot of ways, but it doesn't feel like it coming into it. There's questions being asked, and that's not a bad thing. Like I think the defensiveness a little bit about people have strong feelings and people have strong reactions. I'm cool with that. I love it. I think it's a good thing because I don't think you're getting this type of discussion in New York about the Red Bulls, Houston about the Dynamo, or in Kansas City about why Peter Vermes rotated his squad in Panama. You know, I mean, he left Tim Mealy out. He left a lot of guys out, and they lose in Panama. Now, they should take care of business in the second leg. They did get a goal on the road, but Independiente went to Toronto and got a 1-1 draw, and that would see them through here. I don't think that type of reaction is happening in other cities on this scale. That's a good thing. I mean, Nick, you've followed the game around the world your whole life. This is normal. This is completely normal.
It is. This is 100% totally normal. It doesn't matter who the manager is. I would say that Pep is probably the one manager whoever gets a pass on any sort of questionable loss. But it doesn't matter how large the team is. And typically it happens with the better teams that when there's a stumbling issue that social media erupts and goes volcanic in full Chernobyl mode, and we want everyone fired, we want everyone gone and clean house. But this is something where Frank isn't leaving unless Frank wakes up tomorrow morning and says, "Hey, you know what? I think I'm going back to the Netherlands. I just don't know. I think I'm just going back," which is not going to happen. It's part of the process of, and remember we talked about this. There will be some games where you're going to look and you're going to be like, "My God, this is amazing. I see what they're talking about." And then there's going to be some that are like, "What in God's name are we doing?" I think because of schedule compression, we're seeing a magnifying glass on the, "Oh my God, what are we doing?" If this was a normal MLS schedule like last year, in the year before, then I don't think a lot of these issues are as magnified as they are now. But you're seeing it within a 2-week period. So it's something where it's there, it happens. This is a global phenomenon. We are not an isolated case, but there are things. It's okay to be frustrated at certain aspects of the game. Absolutely. And I'm talking about the frustration with Atlanta United. There are some issues that are going to have to be answered wholesale from MLS down the road if they really want to be competitive in CONCACAF Champions League. I'm talking about salaries and roster construction and, working with the players union to try to see if you are a CONCACAF Champions League team, if you can get your players in earlier so that way you can be more competitive. That's stuff that's going to have to be answered on the MLS side. But this is normal. It's, disappointing, but normal.
Yeah, the bigger picture things are absolutely there, and it's another element to last night specifically. I mean, you're facing a team in midseason form, and you're not. You haven't played a game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium yet. So that's a disadvantage. It flat out is. You don't have the same energy level. You don't have the same just experience as a group dealing with adversity. You're not in the same place. So that's a disadvantage for sure, and that's something that MLS, if they want to be a true contender in CONCACAF Champions League on a regular basis, they have to figure these things out. Much bigger picture issue than what we're kind of at right now. Joe Boss says, "I think this is a little more than a small tweak. We are doing nowhere near as well as we fans thought." Patience, patience, patience. Let's talk about the expectations a little bit. And Nick, I think you kind of hit on some of it. And Jared, I want to get your take on this part. So the reaction of the fans to be frustrated, upset, scared, worried, all the above is completely normal because this is a big club that has big expectations. How fair were the expectations coming into this year with new manager, CONCACAF first time? Or is it just honestly a learning process across the board for everybody?
I think it's a little bit of every column possible there, because we're 3 games into this season, and one of them, like we talked about the other day, well, really 4 games then. Like we've played 4 games. One of them was a game. One of them was a game in Costa Rica where you. I'm kidding. I'm getting dialogue. I don't know.
Dude, I
fired up.
Take
I
your
like
soundbite, dude.
She's very fired up. One of them was a game in Costa Rica where everybody kind of takes a beating. Then you've got a game at home where you do the job against a Costa Rican team that you feel like you were better than, and you were that night. The DC game was weird. You've never done well in DC, and you went down to the most expensive club in North America on this tectonic plate, really, and got your skull beaten in physically and on the score sheet. It's kind of, for me, it's like kind of weird to look at this and go, we're 4 games in. I understand everybody's annoyed. I'm disappointed by what we've seen from the last 2 games, even though they are different games. Just looking at them individually, where you struggled on a wet pitch in DC, and then last night, when you look at them in the vacuum and take away all the, everything about them, it is disappointing. And I think it's okay to be disappointed. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, though. And that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. At the same time, it's 4 games in, but you've played 1 league game. You've got a Cincinnati team who, man, let's be honest, it didn't inspire a lot of confidence last time out. I think you have to kind of balance how much you rotate here, because it may sound cheesy, but I think it would do well for morale to go beat Cincinnati Skull in Sunday if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, but you have to balance that, because you do want to give yourself a shot Wednesday night, because you never know what can happen in cup competitions. Weird stuff can happen. Monterrey could just show up and completely, pull a PSG for all we know. So you don't want to just completely fire every bit of shot you've got against Cincinnati and leave yourself with a B lineup next Wednesday. But I think it would do well to kind of balance it and give Cincinnati a good shot here. So it would do well for morale, I think, for the team and for the fan base to go thump Cincinnati a little bit, because I think you're hanging a banner. You might be getting rings. There's a lot going on Sunday.
If I could really quick here, what I want to do is take it back to Real Madrid. And when you look at what happened with Real Madrid post Champions League win, when they went on that epic string, they cemented themselves as one of the greatest teams ever assembled. Right? You win 3 Champions Leagues, it's tops. But when they lost Ronaldo and then they changed managers, the fan base expected the same results. Did they get those same results? No, obviously. There was a step back. Now, I'm not comparing Miguel Almiron to Cristiano Ronaldo by any stretch, but I am saying that they were both the talismans of the team, where if there was something that needed to be done in a critical moment, that player would step up and do it. And when you change the manager and you have that key player loss, there's going to be a transition. We as fans can sit there and say, yes, we expect and demand this level of performance. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that when things happen, such as a manager leaving, a critical player leaving, regardless of the reason, and then schedule compression, that a step back can happen. And this is the case here. It's more than just, we can't just look at it and say, hey, here are these games that have taken place. Everything's going to hell in a handbasket and, burn everything to the ground. We have to look at everything, take it into context, and then say, okay, how do we fix this thing? How do we get it right? And what can we as fans do outside of putting #DeBoer out? What can we do to be a part of this process? And step one is showing up on Sunday and screaming your lungs out and supporting this team, because if you saw the same thing I saw, you saw a lot of dejected faces walking off of that pitch. And the one thing we can do for stars like PT and the guys who are new to the squad is show them, hey, look, this is an Atlanta crowd. You're home now, and we're going to blow your eardrums out, and support them 112%. If you want to yell and scream, go ahead and go for it. But if you want to cheer and get nuts, that's what we can do as fans to be a part of the process. But by all means, feel free to be disappointed if you need to. Just understand the context around it.
How come your kid never drops hot takes like mine does? Like just in the background.
That quick
The
with
hot takes are internal.
Yeah, mine's are external. They're very quickly.
Jackie Fresh will be more than happy to drop a hot drop within the hot drop itself. He has no fear of these things.
No, he does not. He does not at all.
Let's look ahead to the schedule here a little bit. So you have played 4 matches. We knew you had 7 before St. Patrick's Day. You've got 3 left. You play Sunday against Cincinnati, who didn't look good in their MLS debut in Seattle. You play Wednesday at home against Monterrey, 3-0 down on aggregate. You play the following Sunday against Philadelphia, who played their 4-4-2 diamond in the first week of the season. Harris Medunjanin forgot about tracking, anybody coming out of midfield and gave up goals.
That was amazing.
Michael Bradley is your leading goal scorer in MLS right now, thanks to
Golden Boot, Michael Bradley right there.
Golden Boot is Michael Bradley and Jordan Morris on like his 8th ACL.
I don't think Michael Bradley is going to be making late runs into the box against Harris Medunjanin on a regular basis, though. You have 2 league matches that you should win. At home, you should win. You're expected to win. And you have a match against Monterrey that, hey, you got nothing to lose now. You have absolutely nothing to lose. You go in, you have a week like this where you beat Cincinnati, you lose 2-1, or you win, or no, you win 2-1 but lose on aggregate. You win 2-0 but don't quite find it. You have some positivity coming out of Monterrey and the second leg. Okay. And then you beat Philadelphia. Things could be very, very different in a few days' time. Then you have 2 weeks off. Now, you are going to have some players on international duty. Pity Martinez called up officially to the Argentine national team. Pretty crazy when you see the graphic from the Argentine Federation of, forwards, Lionel Messi, Barcelona, Pity Martinez, Atlanta United. Amazing. It's crazy. That's why I've seen some of the takes about Pity Martinez. Stop. He's a player on a different level than what we've seen here on a regular basis. Flat out. Has he shown all of that yet? No, he hasn't. He moved from Huracan to River Plate, and it was a struggle. And at times, he was getting booed off the field. It was a big-time struggle. I believe there was, reportedly, his car was vandalized by River Plate fans because it was a very tough time for him when he first moved to River Plate. How many times do we see this in the world's game where you have a player who is at another level like Pity Martinez, who is a special kind of player, a fantasista, a dreamer, a guy who doesn't see the game the same way as everybody else, a guy who can pull out, magic. Takes him a little bit of time to fit in because they don't see the game the same way. He's not Miguel Almiron. He's not the same player. You can't expect him to be. And it's taken a little bit of time. I wish it had been faster. I thought it could have been. It's not. You have to adjust to that. But some of the takes on Pity Martinez, I think, are borderline ridiculous. He is going to come good. Argentina would not be calling him into a national team if they didn't think he was good enough to be on the same squad as Lionel Messi. That's a big thing, y'all. That's a huge thing. Look back at the last 2 matches. He came on as a sub in D.C., and everything changed for Atlanta United to play through him. Flat out. You can go back and look at the touches. You can look at the passing matrices. You can see that everybody said, let's get the ball to Pity and let's see if he can change this for us. Last night, you had 5 shots. He had 3 of them. He had your shot on target. He nearly caught Baravero off his line on a free kick. He had 2 key passes. He was fouled 10 times, earned 10 free kicks. Probably could have picked up another 5. Dangerous off the dribble.
My favorite one was the one where he got fouled. The ref played advantage, and like 2 seconds later, he got fouled again and taken down, and the ref just quit playing advantage.
Yeah, and didn't call anything. Yeah, there were 2 fouls, and it's like, the second foul canceled out the first foul, and there's no advantage, so just keep playing. because that's
and you
logical.
just see Pitty sitting there looking back like, he didn't even look mad. He just looked like, really? Confused.
Yeah. Then you go deeper into the numbers on Pitty from last night. I mean, he had, out of the 10 crosses the team had, he had 7 of them, and 3 of them were considered good crosses, and 4 of them were from open play, and half of those were good. He was the offense last night, and he took the punishment for being the offense last night. Pitty's going to be fine. It might take a minute, but he's going to be fine. What he needs is that support that Nick talks about. That's a key part of what's going on here is, he needs to feel that home crowd. He needs to get that. He hasn't had a chance to experience that. This team needs that lift on Sunday. It's going to be a big part of the story. They're going to need that lift on Wednesday. If they're going to pull off a miracle, they're going to need that lift to do it, and they're going to need it the following week. This is a tough stretch. They have the talent to get through it, but they're also very tired because of the schedule, because of the compression, because of having to try to elevate your game to a point that you're playing midseason, except you're not. And you're playing the best team in Mexico right now. I think Monterrey is more balanced than Tigres. We'll see this weekend because they play each other, and we'll see what kind of an effect that will have on Wednesday night at Mercedes-Benz. I'll be very curious to see Monterrey's lineup. I'll be very curious to see what the feeling is in the Rayados camp after that one, because you talk about expectations and the reaction that we've seen here in Atlanta after the last 2 matches. Monterrey hasn't lost in 2019. Monterrey lost in the second leg at Cruz Azul of the semifinals in the Apertura in December. Their loss before that was back in September. This is a team that has been dominant, but this is a team that was feeling a lot of pressure a couple of weeks ago because they've been struggling to score goals from the run of play. They struggled against Alianza from El Salvador. They've got 2 losses since August. They haven't lost in 2019. They're feeling that pressure because they have those expectations. They set those expectations. Doesn't happen by accident. Atlanta United has done the same. Now they're feeling that pressure. Now you see what this team is made of, and you see what Frank de Boer is made of. Does he have to make an adjustment in terms of the tactics? He might, because of who's available. The Julian Gressel injury hurt this team in a big way. On the backs of the Franco Escobar injury, missing your 2 right-sided players, you're forcing Mikey Ambrose over to the right side. Again, the criticism of Mikey Ambrose is extremely harsh, in my opinion. Mikey
ain't there because he's the starter.
Doesn't even matter. Mikey did his job. Mikey, yes, did not really contribute going forward. You were playing in Monterrey against the best team on the continent. You're not expected to go forward a whole lot. You're defending. You're worried about defending. He did his job.
Well, we saw that as well with the roster construction when you had Parkhurst outside, and that's because the passing you had that bracket of players who are really good passers around Ambrose. That way, Ambrose just focuses on his job, which is defending. And I remember there were times last year, so quickly we forget, that when Ambrose was out, people were screaming, "Oh my God, if we only had Ambrose!" So let's not have that short of a memory on the value that Ambrose brings. And there will be times that Atlanta United will be an underdog, outside, more than if we end up playing in the Bernabeu someday or, Camp Nou, then we will be the underdog from time to time. And that's okay. And Monterrey's a really good team, but there are injuries that contribute to this. It's not like they stuck Ambrose out there with a healthy Gressel on the bench or a healthy Escobar on the bench. So we have to keep that in mind. It was there because it was necessity, not because, hey, this is our desired option.
I'd like to build on what Nick said about having Parkhurst playing on the outside, which was fun, except for that one ball where he tried to push it out of play and played it right to the Rayados attacker.
Yeah,
LGP breaks it up by forcing the quick shot, which it worked out. Be that as it may. Been real quiet on the Miles Robinson can't play in the middle of back 3 argument, y'all. Been real quiet.
Miles Robinson was moved to the middle to deal with probably the best forward in CONCACAF in Rogelio Funes Mori. And I would say that Mr. Robinson did his job very, very well. Funes Mori did not end up on the score sheet. Monterrey really had problems finding him because Miles Robinson did a very good job, and he cleaned up other messes. I thought Miles was outstanding defensively. Then you take it to the next level. His passing never gets credit for it. And the knock that people still want to throw out from 2017 on Miles Robinson is that he's not good with the ball at his feet. Go back and look at a couple of the line-splitting passes that he had out of the back. He had one to Nagby. He had one to Joseph that nearly created an opportunity. Miles is a starter in this league, flat out. He is a starter in this team and in this league, flat out. And if you want to try to go back in these 4 games and find a whole series of mistakes that Miles Robinson's made, I'd love to see it.
Good luck.
I think he's been outstanding. And him playing in the middle, Parker's playing in the middle, that gets overblown in a big way. I thought last night it was specifically...
That's my point of bringing it up.
Yeah, it was specifically last night, though, to deal with Funes Mori. Because from a physical standpoint, Parkhurst matching up with Funes Mori is a tough matchup for Michael Parkhurst. Miles Robinson dealing with him, it worked. He did the job. The goals weren't coming from Funes Mori. And the goals weren't coming from the right side of the team either. Mikey Ambrose didn't give anything up. And, by the way, the only other player other than Pitti to have more than one cross in the match was Mikey Ambrose. So the Mikey issue is he the ideal right back? No. He's not a right back. He's a left-sided player. But he has filled in admirably, and you haven't had any problems. You haven't gotten as much going forward from him. You didn't get as much against DC, a little more of an issue. Against Monterrey, it's defense first, flat out. And honestly, the defense was good for 75 minutes. I really think it was. The introduction of Pizarro changed things for Monterrey. It gave them fresh legs. It gave them a boost in the middle. They moved Maxi Meza into the middle of the field. It worked.
Who should still be... I will still shun every team in this league because nobody shelled out for Maxi Meza when they could have.
You could have got him for a really good price. Monterrey ended up paying a whole lot of money for him, set their record transfer, and he's fulfilling that in a big way. So
should have bought him after that cup game.
Yep. It's an interesting day, and it's an interesting week ahead for Atlanta United. They have to bounce back, and I think Sunday is going to have an interesting vibe, a far more different vibe than we thought it would have going into it. You know, this was going to be a celebration of last year's MLS Cup win, a little bit of a celebration of FC Cincinnati coming to town for the first time. Now, it's going to be some jangly nerves. It's going to be some trepidation. All that's okay. It's up to this team to step up to it and to manage it. A couple other things that have come through here. 4-Card Ahmed said, let's get through next Wednesday. We can focus on the regular season and the other trophies we can win going forward. Campeones Cup, U.S. Open Cup, Supporters Shield, MLS Cup. Let's be honest, CONCACAF Champions League was the least likely to win. Get back to it next year and show up with my enforcers. Any Champions League is tough to win. Manchester City, how much money have they spent to be where they are now? $11 billion? Is that
pretty
the
close
number at this point?
I think that's accurate, yes.
It might be low.
How many Champions Leagues do they have?
I believe Bupkis would be the term.
Same as the San Diego Padres.
How great of a manager is Pep Guardiola? I mean, is
Last
he the
time
best
I
one out
checked,
there
he's
right
okay.
now? Is he
He's
the
all right.
best in the world right now? I would say that. I would lean that way.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
he's not, he's in your top 3, and if he's not in your top 3, you're being a hater. He didn't win a Champions League at Bayern Munich either. Like, it's not easy. And when you're a club going there for the first time, you struggle. It's different. You're traveling to different places. You're playing teams that have a different style, a different personality. In this case, you're playing a team that is probably it's the first time that you have been an underdog on paper, a true underdog on paper against a roster that's better than yours. Flat out. It's the first time that's happened. Maybe early in 2017 before you knew exactly what some of these guys were going to be, before you knew how good Miguel Almiron could be, before you knew how good Joseph Martinez could be. Okay. Since Atlanta United became established, let's say midway, the Mercedes-Benz run in 2017, where it's like, wow, okay, this team is special. Since then, this is the first time you've been completely outclassed on paper on a roster. Because Monterrey's that good. So you have to learn to deal with that. You have to learn how to play as the underdog. You have to learn to play as the lesser team. It's a different process. It's a different thing altogether. They struggled with it yesterday. I think they needed to make that change to just defend the 2-goal lead at that point. At 1-0, I thought the legs were going, it's my opinion from where I'm seeing it. At 2, I think the game state has changed, and it's time to shut things down, whether it's with the personnel you have on the field or substitutions right there to do it. I think that's where the mentality had to change, and it just didn't. And that was the frustrating part for me. You get out of there at 2-0, you're going to be okay coming into the second leg, and it's going to feel very different. 3-0, it's a completely different feeling. It's an interesting moment. Chandler Creel says the Monterrey coach in the Matrix cosplay last night was dope. He kind of did go for the all black on black look, Diego Alonso.
I mean, we've had one coach dressed like the Matrix, and the other one wore a snapback.
He's like Simeone. That's all.
Champions League is great.
I mean, he's your classic Uruguayan. So, I mean, Simeone was Argentine, but they're both gritty. They're both kind of nasty. They'd hack you. Alonso would hack you if he had to, for sure. I'm sure he did on the field many times. His team sure did, so I'm assuming that came from somewhere. He did the job. And there were questions about him recently, which surprised me because, again, they haven't lost in 2019, but there were questions. He answered them. The Pizarro sub was the one that turned the game on its head. It was the one that changed the feeling of it, and he got that right. You have to give him credit for that. Kevin from Charlotte says, willing to accept that Pitti being hacked down and so many fouls in transition may have caused the majority of the offensive issues, but can accept lack of subs being used after the 70th minute. Pointless to bring on an extra time. I don't ever look at subs unless you're in a situation like Sunday where it felt managed to me. I felt like Gressel and Pitti were playing 30 minutes no matter what the scoreline was. That was the idea. I don't feel like you have to make subs at a certain time. So 70 minutes, and Kevin's maybe talking about the game state. And if you are, please, Kevin, chime in. I'm not trying to throw you under the bus or anything. The 70-minute mark didn't really matter to me. Alonso brought on Pizarro in the 71st. He didn't really do anything for the first couple minutes. I felt like the game was turning around the 75th. That was what I noted. I need to go back and watch the whole thing and see, okay, what was it? Was it just Pizarro bringing fresh legs? Was it moving Meza? What was it at this point that changed it? Is that where the legs went for Atlanta? If it is, then that's where you probably should be looking at a sub. And if it's just fresh legs first, cool. If it's to change the tactical setup or to change the philosophy, cool. 75-ish is where my head was about when the game started to turn. You needed to protect what you have. I remember games coaching. I remember games on the touchline and NPSL stuff or local leagues or whatever, where you're managing a team and you look at it and you just know that on that day you're not scoring a goal. You could play for 2-3 hours. You're not scoring a goal. It's not happening. That was kind of the feeling when the game turned, when it was turning at that point, when it looked like, okay, Monterrey's grabbed this back. Now it's time to just shut it down. Just shut it down and defend what you have. And that's That's that approach. Those are those things you learn in being in these competitions. These are the things that you learn in how to manage situations. They didn't have it last night, and that's the frustrating part of it. The offensive issues last night for me are Monterrey's good. And every time you tried to transition, you got hacked down and you didn't see yellow cards. But mainly, Monterrey's good. And they're very good defensively. And now they've played, I'd have to go back to see when they last conceded, what minute it was in the match, but 450-plus minutes of shutout ball. That's what Monterrey's throwing right now. That's pretty good. That's pretty good defense. So you're not going to create a lot against a team like that. It's just not going to happen. Shiva asked about the team's vibe, saying I'm around them more than the fans are. In Shiva's opinion, the worst thing that could happen is the players give up and don't want to play the system and play for the coach. No hint of that. I didn't think there was any hint of that last night. Zero. You saw the team. I mean, they were tired at the end, and I think it affected especially the third goal, but I didn't see any quit in the team at all. There's a difference between being tired and not being able to step, like Darlington Nagbe, for example, on the second goal. Nagbe ran his lungs out. You're getting pushed deeper and deeper. You're on your heels. He struggled to defend Pabon, one, because Pabon is good, two, because Nagbe is gassed and on his heels because you're getting pushed back. Zero reason because he didn't want to, Like, there was none of that. So you can read a lot of things into results, but Jarrett John, I mean, whoever wants to take it, go for it. I haven't seen anything like that about players looking like they're quitting, giving up, not playing hard, any of that type of stuff. I'm not seeing it, and just off the field, I'm not seeing it at all. I mean, everything is businesslike. It's nobody's happy with the way things are going, and everybody wants to change it.
No. For me, I have seen the want-to gene in all of these guys in every match. I have not seen a situation where they're just like, and then you wave your hand in the air and you're done. No, I honestly thought that for me it was around 70, and I could kind of sense it. And like I said, I have no empirical evidence to justify my thought, but usually 70th minute to 75 last night was where I'm like, okay, pack it in, shore your lines up, get your defense squared away, and make sure that you get out of there with 1-0 with a tired bunch of guys who are kind of showing that they're getting tired. And no, I have not seen in any instance so far this year of any kind of towel throwing under any circumstance whatsoever.
Yeah, I just haven't seen a hint of that. Jared?
No, I don't think you're there yet. I think there's frustration. It's so weird seeing last night was just the more and more I go back on it. I'll have something up tonight or tomorrow morning on SDH or 24 hours after. Trying to give ourselves a little bit of time to breathe, like a good red wine. Where it's just so weird going back and looking and thinking about it, just how much you just weren't able to get anything going because you're getting hacked down. Even seeing Joseph just not being able to get anything going, and not even on the receiving end, but even when he was dropping back, there was a man on or he was getting fouled every time. I mean, it was suffocating to watch, and it was frustrating to watch. I would
good
say,
word.
though, that I don't think you're going to run into this kind of situation in league games. If Pity Martinez is getting fouled 10 times a game and there's no yellow cards, there are going to be ejections on the Atlanta sideline, and there are going to be ejections on the Atlanta field, because at that point there will be full-scale riots. But I don't think you're going to run into that kind of situation consistently in this league. And look, I'm very disappointed the way Champions League seems to have gone. You got through Herediano, which was a tricky draw. I mean, we talked about it the night of the draw. Remember, we did a live show the night it was drawn and talked about how tricky it was going to be. You got through that. Then you got handed, what a matchup that a lot of people would have taken for a final. And you got a tough end of the bracket, and it so far hasn't worked out. You got 90 minutes left to to pull this out of the grave and throw dirt on it. Can you do it? I don't know. But it's your first foray into it. I think more than anything, I think maybe my expectations were a bit too high, I guess. I don't know if they were or not when you look at the talent on this roster, and not just the raw talent on this roster, the experience this roster has with PT and Barco and LGP and Tito when he comes off the bench. You've got guys and Remedi who have experience with the highs and lows of cup competitions, some cup competitions that, make CONCACAF look sane sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the moment. It's not the moment being too big or anything like that. I think it's the combination of the group experience, and Tata talked about that in the playoffs in 2017 going into 2018. It's like sometimes you have to go through that adversity, and it brings you together, and it makes things stronger. You take that, and you combine it with new manager, tweaks to the way you play, change without Miguel Almiron. I mean, how much did we talk about it in 2017, guys, where you're building something? It's not 100%. There's moments where it looked good. There's moments where it looked bad. But you always had the out with speed. You always had the opportunity to say, you know what, nothing's working. We're going to play direct, and we're going to let Tito run onto something. We're going to play direct, and we're going to let Miguel run onto something, and we're going to open the game up that way. You always had that. In this system right now, in the 3-4-3, with Barco and Pity and Joseph, you don't have that as much. You don't. You can try to play over the top to Joseph, and it's low percentage. You can try to play over the top to Pity or Barco, and it's not suiting their game. It's different. It takes time for that different chemistry, that different style, for one, for the team to adjust to it, for those players to adjust. It takes time for it to be sharp. Abernasty on Twitter says, growing pains hurt, sometimes a lot. Is it June yet? I hope it doesn't take till June. I hope you can find ways to get results while you're building. And that's probably where you're at right now, is you have to figure out that pragmatism and maybe find a little more pragmatism and say, we are building for something. We do want to play this way. We do want to play in a very I don't know the best way to put it, because it's not like you talk about English teams playing in a continental style where it is more possession based. It is a little different. Pep Guardiola, when he came to England first year, they didn't win anything. Everybody freaked out. Oh, he's not that good. Oh, this style will never work here. It's kind of where you're at in some ways, of you're trying to do something different. It's not working as well as it can. Can it get there? And how long does it take to get there? And while you're doing it, can you find a way to maintain a high level? That's going to be the question here. And you hoped it wasn't going to happen, but it has. That's where you're at right now. You're going to have to figure these things out of, can I continue along this line of just building, and it'll break through? Or maybe I need an intermediate step. We'll see what happens. Sherb's about the referees, pretty good one. Can't wait to get back to MLS, where the refs are merely incompetent rather than blatantly corrupt. They weren't corrupt, Sherbs. It's a good line. It's a good line. They were bad. And the way I looked at it is, if you are, let's say, NC State in basketball, and, they pop up every 10 years or so, and NC State is a powerhouse in the ACC, and then they go back downhill. When NC State goes to Duke or goes to North Carolina, do they get a call, like, ever? No. When you have anybody who is not North Carolina going into Duke, and you have anybody going into North Carolina that's not Duke, when you have anybody going into those buildings in college basketball, you don't get calls. You have to
ask
take
Julius
your lunch.
Hodge.
You can ask everybody, because I think college basketball and the worldwide game of soccer are the two closest things in the way referees can affect it. Home teams get advantages. Flat out. It happens. But also, big teams get advantages. It happens. Atlanta in MLS, I don't know if they've been refereed like they're a big team yet. We'll see if that changes in 2019. In CONCACAF, they're not a big team. They are on paper. They are at the box office. They are in value. They're not in the minds of referees. They're the new kids. They don't get that respect. Monterrey,
Nope.
Go back and look at the penalties they got against Alianza. They were both soft. The penalty here was soft. It's because Monterrey is a big club and they're respected. They're going to get those calls. It's very frustrating when you're playing against it because you're not necessarily on a level playing field the way the referees look at it. You try to avoid that stuff, but it is human nature. Go ahead, Jarrett.
The best part was I forget the guy. I can't remember his name for the life of me. The guy who drew the penalty, number 8 for
Dorlan Pabon.
Thank you. If you just the rocket leg. At one point, he picks up a foul, not a card, but just a foul for the shoulder check into Breck Shea.
Yes,
and then is just incredulous
kidney
about
shot.
The foul call. It's just trucked Breck Shea. You know what it takes to truck Breck Shea? It was amazing. And then he was irate about the call, and you see LGP run over and get into it with him. And all I can think is LGP's probably sitting there talking about the penalty at the moment.
But those are the things. Pabon, but he does that because he knows he's on a big team. He's with Monterrey. If he complains about something, that's going to have an effect. Not even he can do that. It's going to have an effect. If an Atlanta United player reacted in that way, you would get a negative reaction from the referee. Those are the things within the game. Those are the little things. Those are the things that you really you don't learn until you go through it. And that's where Atlanta United is. CONCACAF maybe is exaggerated in that way because you don't have as many strong referees. You don't. You don't have as many strong leagues. You don't have as many strong national federations. You don't have as many strong referees. It's the same thing we talk about with Major League Soccer, how the quality of play has outpaced the development of referees. CONCACAF, it's the same thing across the board, except it's always been a great disparity between American referees, Mexican referees, and Central American referees or Caribbean referees. They don't get the same level of experience game in, game out. They don't. Cornejo, the referee last night, he works in the Salvadoran Primera División. It's not as good as MLS. It's not as good as Liga MX. It's not as fast. It's not the same style of play. You have different challenges in leagues like that, for sure. But pace of play, speed of play, the way the game's played, you're not getting that as much. And it has an effect. So it's frustrating. It did not cost Atlanta United the match last night. It did not. But it was very frustrating, and it could have been a different match if things were handled a little differently. That's for sure. Question about a process to appeal suspensions. You're not going to get anything out of that. There might be one, but it's a yellow card. I mean, you're not going to look at the LGP foul and say, well, there's no way that could be a yellow. Like, the only way you're doing that is if it's mistaken identity or something. Like, it's a referee judgment call. He made the judgment call. I didn't like it because you had players hacking Pity Martinez on a regular basis, not seeing yellows. LGP gets a yellow for that one. I think in a lot of games it's a yellow. In that game, the way it was being called the other way, it's not a yellow. It might not even be a foul. That's the frustrating part of it. But, again, that's being the new kid on the block in CONCACAF. That's how these things go, and you have to take your time to learn from it. You have to. The attack is a big thing, and we've got Felipe Cardenas joining us in about 10 minutes. We'll take a little short break to get him on the line before that, and we'll get into the attack with him. So that's been something that's come up a lot. We'll get to that, so hang tight. I've seen the questions there. Percy Herrera with one about Pity and the way you incorporate him, about playing through him, playing to him, how that works. We'll get to that in a second. I agree, Percy, though. I'm with you. Will Palmer asks, what are some of the things MLS can do to help their teams in CONCACAF Champions League? John, what do you think?
Slide the schedule back. Start earlier.
They're talking about that. So that's the rumor, is that next year that'll happen.
And for me, that's first and foremost because you have these teams who, we've said, they're in midseason form. You know, you've got your Liga MX sides playing in their Clausura. And right now, how many league matches have the MLS sides played? One.
Yeah.
there's got to be a way that you can reorient things to at least help out the league in general, get it closer to everyone else schedule-wise, and if you're in these hemispheric competitions, help things along where you can sit there and say, okay, you've got that extra week of, which would be a week earlier than when Atlanta United started this year. So for me, first and foremost, it's scheduling and getting players in so you can integrate, so you're not having a situation like you're having here with Atlanta United with a new coach, a tweaked system, new personnel, and this critical mass of all of these elements having to play itself. And what was the first match that you played this year? Was in CONCACAF Champions League. Wasn't in your own league. You weren't able to sort things out domestically. First shot you had was playing in Costa Rica. So for me, first and foremost, scheduling. I think that's 1, 2, and 3.
What about you, Jarrett? What else can MLS do to give their teams a better chance in CONCACAF?
Open up the budgets, add another DP slot, get rid of DPs entirely, and just open it up to free range. Incentivize opening up the checkbook. Don't know how exactly you'd go about doing that, but I mean, firepower. I mean, at some point you gotta open the guns up, and the league's got to allow you to open the guns up. And I know we just had this conversation, and I know it probably sounds insane because we just had this conversation about LAFC and the fourth DP gate and all that jazz. But opening things up for teams to spend more, and giving them the opportunity, but also making it more reasonable to spend more, because you're going to need more guns in this fight.
I think last night showed some of that. I mean, you're talking about a team in Atlanta United that has probably been constructed in the most aggressive way using MLS rules that we've ever seen. You just look at the player values, and Atlanta's far ahead of the rest of the league. They've been willing to spend on transfer fees. They're signing different types of players. They've also created a reputation where you're getting players who want to be here. It's different than we've ever seen. And they're still unable to compete on paper with a Monterrey. You're talking about, I think Atlanta's transfer marked team values around $65 million. Monterrey's is over 90. And Monterrey is definitely the biggest in Mexico. But there are other teams closer to Monterrey than there are other teams closer to Atlanta in MLS. This is about as good as you can have a roster in MLS, using the rules and hitting on all your signings. And it's not the same type of roster as Monterrey, flat out. I mean, Diego Alonso said it. He can go too deep at every position. He can. He's got guys that are sitting the bench that would start for a lot of other teams in Liga MX, and it would definitely start for the overwhelming majority of teams in MLS. They have to settle for being a rotation player at Monterrey because they've set that expectation to be one of the grandes, and they play like it, and they show it. Before we take a break and before we get Felipe on, I do want to talk a little bit about Monterrey just as a club and just the experience of everything, getting a chance to go. I got in, the team got in on Monday. They trained in the D.C. area and then flew down. I flew in on the evening flight Tuesday night and did see some Atlanta United fans on the plane, which was very cool, and got to the hotel late. We got there in time to watch the Tigres Houston game. And, Mike and I watching it, we're noticing 60, 65 minutes, there's that wall, and Houston's legs look like jelly, and Tigres put them away. And it was very cool to walk into the hotel in Monterrey, and, of course, Tigres is in Monterrey as well. And the game is on at the hotel bar on every TV. We go to the hotel was connected to a giant shopping mall, almost like a Phipps Plaza type of mall. We go to eat at California Pizza Kitchen, and the game's on every TV. with volume, everything. It was a big, big deal. That was very cool. So that was Tuesday night for me. The guys had went to the stadium for training. Mike and Doug were there for the press conferences, and the people at Monterrey gave them a tour of the whole stadium, showed them everything behind the scenes. It's an amazing stadium, just a beautiful, beautiful venue. Very, very cool place to see a game. It felt very European, like the way it looked, and I don't know if it gave this look on TV, the field being elevated, the benches being kind of dugouts, the managers, having to get up out of the dugout onto the touchline, a lot of space, around the field. Like it felt like a big European venue. It had that type of vibe. Venue was great. Everybody associated with the club was outstanding to deal with. Every person from pulling in and parking the bus we were on, the staff bus, from pulling inside the gates to walking out the door at the end of the night, every security person, Monterey staff member, stadium staff member said thank you, said welcome. Very nice. Anything you needed, they got it. It was really amazing. It was very cool to see. And, Atlanta's been lucky with two great experiences in CONCACAF Champions League with two clubs that take it very seriously, take the competition very seriously, but also show a lot of respect and treat the opposition with a lot of respect. It's very cool to see because that hasn't always been the case in CONCACAF. That hasn't always been the case for American teams. Having guys like Joseph Martinez and Pity Martinez do help. You're going to get a lot of attention in that regard. It is kind of special to have Atlanta come to town. But everybody at the stadium, everything about the stadium, everybody at the club, super cool to deal with, very nice, incredibly professional. I highly recommend if you get a chance to go see a big game at Estadio BBVA Bancomer, you go do it. You go see that game. Like this weekend, the Clásico Regio with Monterrey and Tigres, would love to see that at some point firsthand. I mean, they're talking about it right now in Univision Deportes. They're talking about who's the better forward, Funes Mori or Gignac. This is the type of talk you get about that game. It's going to be a huge game on Saturday. We'll see if that has an effect on Monterrey coming in on Wednesday. If Tigres gets a big win, Monterrey starts to question themselves. You also started a complete first-choice lineup last night. If they start that again on Saturday, maybe you have some rotation. Maybe you're turning to some guys who haven't played as much. Maybe they're not quite as sharp. Things can happen. It's not over yet. Diego Alonso said it. Look, it's not done yet. This series is not defined yet. It's not over. Atlanta gets a win on Sunday, gets a better feeling about it, gets a better vibe going, gets a more positivity around it. You come in Wednesday, you've got nothing to lose, you get an early goal, anything can happen. That early goal and goals in general have been an issue for Atlanta United. We're going to take a break. We're going to get Felipe Cardenas on from The Athletic, see what he thinks about the attack, what can be done, what's going wrong, and we'll talk about the lack of goal scoring, something that Atlanta United's been known for that is not happening much at all right now. Not many chances have been created in the last two matches. We'll talk about why after this.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA is a national nonprofit working to transform youth and high school sports so that every child has a positive character-building youth sports experience. PCA provides live and online workshops to train double-goal coaches whose first goal is winning and whose second, more important goal is teaching life lessons through sports. PCA also has workshops for parents and high school student athletes. For more information, please visit positivecoach.org.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. This cat makes me make art. He's always motivating me to draw pictures of him. He just is motivating artistically. He's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
Keyboard Cat, YouTube star and shelter pet. Amazing adoption stories start in shelters. Start yours today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
First break, 90 minutes in. That's typical.
That's CONCACAF style, baby.
That's Overreaction Thursday for you. If you have overreactions and we have not talked about your overreactions, please send your overreactions to us on Twitter at @SoccerDownHere. Maybe you have some overreactions to throw at Felipe Cardenas of The Athletic. Felipe, what's up?
What's up, guys? Yeah, ask me questions. I'm open. I do Q&As with Barker. I'll do a Q&A with the followers.
See, there you go. Felipe, you would have enjoyed the Todos Empanadas place that we ate lunch at yesterday. It
Sounds
was
good.
Outstanding. It's like a little hole in the wall.
Nice.
Owned by some Argentines in Monterrey, like around the corner from the hotel. They had pictures up on the wall. They had an El Gráfico magazine up on the wall. Framed,
nice.
Which was awesome. I'm just about positive, and I haven't been able to figure this out, and I was not able to have the conversation with the people behind the counter because my Spanish is not that good. But there was a picture of Gabriel Batistuta, I'm just about positive, in a Monterrey kit.
What?
And
no.
I'm wondering if it was like a friendly, like a game, a testimonial type game or something like that. That he was there to play with Monterrey in a game like that. I couldn't find anything about it. I'll have to dig deeper, but I could have sworn it was Batistuta in a Monterrey kit. It was really cool.
That is cool. I mean, I think what's really cool about that little anecdote is El Gráfico. It's like that. It just, for the listeners, like that is, it's like the Sports Illustrated or I don't know. Pick your most significant magazine
like sporting
here in the States.
I think would be the best comparison. Yeah. Like it's classic, it's older, and they don't publish anymore, right? Are they?
No, they don't. No, I think they are still around, but I think they're digital now. And when I was growing up, and I would go to Columbia in the summers, that I would always try to find them. You could find them at like your local, like at a gas station or at a bakery. The same place where you could pick up, like the trading cards or the World Cup album cards. And El Gráfico was always like this. I had to have it. And the other day, I don't remember what player it was, but I read a player. It might have been. He was Colombian. His last name was Usuriaga. He played for Independiente in the 90s. Yes. And I think it was his quote, but he said that like his dream was to be on the cover of El Gráfico, and he made it. He made it there one day.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love to find like a El Gráfico cover, of Maradona or something like that, and get that framed and put that on the wall. That's something I need to track down. Okay, enough about empanadas and El Gráfico and cool lunch spots in Monterrey.
It is the dinner hour,
It is.
There's
I'm
never
really hungry
about empanadas, sir.
I need some empanadas right now, but I don't have access to empanadas, so I'm going to grind it out for another half hour or so. This team's not scoring goals, Felipe, and 2 years in, this is a team that has scored more goals. The only one other team in Major League Soccer history has scored 70-plus goals in back-to-back years. DC United in the classic days of 97, 98. Nobody else has done it. Now, you're going back-to-back matches where you had 2 shots on goal Sunday, 1 shot on goal last night. Now, we've talked about it all day. You're talking about different levels of competition, and nobody should have went into the Monterrey match with the expectation that you're going to score a bunch of goals. But the attack doesn't look the same. What's going on in your opinion?
Yeah, it doesn't look the same. I think it's a legitimate concern. And let's first like hash out those, the factors that you just threw out there. Yeah, of course it's Monterrey. They're one of the best teams in the continent. They're a very good team. They knew exactly what to expect from Atlanta, and they were very well prepared. You could see that. So walking away from that match, with a goose egg, I guess, was not unexpected. I was thinking that if Atlanta left Monterrey 1-0 down, it would have been a very good result for them. But then you go back, and the MLS match against DC United, the same thing. Again, a good team in DC United, but the same problems. And I think, listening to the fans yesterday, like reading the tweets, and even me, like when I'm watching the game and I'm thinking, what is going on. I do see it as systematic and tactical growing pains, and that's not easy to correct. And I think that what is a bigger concern is that the players, like psychologically, when they start to believe we can't score, we're having trouble, we're always defending, that kind of messes with any player's head. And especially when you have a goal scorer like Joseph Martinez, he's paid to score goals. He needs to score goals in order to feel like he's in the game, in order to just, get his mind right. And so when the goals start to dry up, and let's not forget, it is extremely difficult to score in this sport at this level. And so when the goals start to dry up, the heads go down, the body language changes. To be perfectly honest with you, like I noticed some body language last night that was noticeable. Even at halftime, there was a shot of the players in the tunnel, before they came out. And it just wasn't the same energy that Atlanta United is used to having. And I think it all goes back to just the big organizational change that is happening right now. So, before I get a little bit more into that, I'll answer your question. I think right now you have two players in the middle, in Nagby and Eric Remedy, that are doing a lot of work. And I wrote about that. I wrote about the fact they were going to be asked to do a lot more in this system under Frank de Boer, and they are. I think they're still getting used to that, with the responsibility of really playing close to their three center backs, but also tasked with distributing the ball, being disciplined defensively, and creating. And that is a tough ask, because right now your creators, in the sense of like Barker and PT, they're not getting it done either, and not in this like negative way that their performances are bad. They're just being shut down, or they're not finding space. I think last night you could tell that anytime Barco was on the ball, anytime PT was on the ball, there was a guy right there to either just hack him down or disrupt him.
Yeah, over half of Monterrey's fouls were against those two players.
Yeah, and so that was planned, that was game planned, and I think right now a quick fix. And again, this is not just something that you can't promise this will happen, but I'm convinced that a player like PT Martinez really is a true 10. He's a guy that can stay central, but he can't always have his back to goal. If he's receiving the ball with his back to goal, for 70 minutes, he's not going to do anything there. But if he can get the ball face up, distribute, get it back, create one, combine, then that offense is going to start to move. The players are going to start to move. The space will open up. And right now, I think PT is also trying to find, what can he do with this team? Where is he most successful? Do I drift wide? Do I find a one-on-one matchup? And in the interview with Barco, he said it. We're still trying to learn, how to play with them. So it's going to take a little bit of time.
So then, let me ask you this, Felipe, and I guess this goes straight into Psychology 101. How vital in the growth of the system, in the mental acuity of the players, how vital is this next week in the growth of the product itself and of the confidence of the players themselves, knowing that they want to get engaged, they want to get involved, because you're going up against the Cincinnati team this weekend, who proved to be very porous against Seattle. Then you have the reverse fixture against Monterrey, where, yes, we can sit here and say anything can happen, but you finally have a building in your house. You have a game in your house against international competition. And then you have a game against Philadelphia in a week's time. So you have 3 matches in an 8-day span, say. How vital do you think this mini run of matches is when it comes to the overall mental well-being of those who want to put the ball in the back of the net and the guys in general who are part of the 11s and the 18s?
Yeah, it's huge. It's funny how, every time I'm on the show, I'm saying the next game is a big game, and now the next game is a big game. They just keep getting bigger. They're getting bigger because they're not winning. They're not consistently getting the result. And then, Cincinnati. I was talking. I was on Slack today with Laura Failer, who covers FC Cincinnati for The Athletic, and we were just kind of talking back and forth about what she's hearing, what I'm hearing. And obviously, Atlanta United has been out of town for a long time, but she thinks that the Cincinnati players believe that they're catching. They may be catching Atlanta at the right time. And I think she's right. I think they're right. This is the kind of team you want to face. I mean, you don't ever want to go into Mercedes-Benz and think you're going to win, but if you have just a little bit of belief, and if you think Atlanta United may be lacking some confidence, or you're seeing their tape now, and you're looking at team playing a new formation, and you're seeing holes in that formation, and weaknesses and weak spots, and players that are unfamiliar with their new roles. As a coach of the opposing team, you're licking your chops, and your team is hungry. I think Cincinnati is hungry to get that first MLS win. So all of a sudden Sunday becomes big. And then that run, like you mentioned, John, it just, the players just, mentally they need to stay true to the system. And we talked about this a lot last season, because when anytime I would get in front of LGP or a player like that, but specifically LGP, and talk to him about Tata Martino's system and his ideas and the philosophy, he would basically preach to me, about how important it was to believe in it, and how important it was for him to be one of those guys that could transmit and communicate Tata's ideas to the rest of the team. How it was something that he truly believed in his heart and his soul and his mind, that this is how we play, this is how we win, this is how we lose. And that is changing. That is changing. And I think that cannot be understated, no matter how much, the club, wanted to say that, De Boer is going to come in and we're going to keep attacking. No, this is a coach that wanted to, put his stamp on the team, and he's still getting used to his roster and seeing where these players fit within the system. So I think there's a lot of change going on, and unfortunately for them, there are a lot of games coming as well. And so, that was something that I noticed last night, going back to the body language, because it's like, I wondered, what is this team in today's modern kind of football, like the system-based modern football is just, that's what's happening. That's what European teams, those are the coaches that they're looking for. What is your system? Can you implement it? And let's grow. And a coach like Tata Martino wasn't necessarily system-based. He had a philosophy, but he was more of like those classic Argentine coaches that are passionate, that can motivate you, that can get in your head and convince you to do things that you may have thought you couldn't do. He's the type of coach that will attack an opposing team on their home field and just tilt the match in their favor right at kickoff. And I think this team under De Boer is just a little bit different. They don't have that verticality and that attitude. It's a totally different type of mindset, and it's going to take time for everyone to kind of get used to that. But like I said, they don't have much time to prepare, because the games just keep coming.
And looking, Felipe, at this team, we were talking earlier about trying to balance Sunday with next Wednesday, because personally, I think you could use for some good luck. And as much as Cincinnati may be looking at chops because Atlanta's still trying to figure things out, Cincinnati didn't inspire a lot of confidence last time out. And it's one of those times where I wonder if you might just kind of lean on raw talent to – it's not as simple as in other sports, I guess, and kind of lean on raw talent just to kind of lean on them and kind of knock them into submission a bit. How much are you balancing, first team, second team going into Sunday's home opener, first time you played in the bin since you lifted a trophy, with Wednesday's game where, let's face it, the odds aren't great, even though the odds are technically still there?
Yeah, I think so far Frank DeBoer has shown, and I don't want to say he's stubborn, because they said the same thing, about Tata Martino. He was stubborn. He wouldn't change. He wouldn't rotate. But so far, Frank DeBoer and his intentions are unknown. It could be he wants this team to gel, or he wants them to feel comfortable in the formation, but he hasn't rotated that much. And so until I see him do that, I'm not going to predict whether or not he'll do it, and whether Andrew Carlton will start on Sunday, or Gordon Wild might get a start. Like I just don't know. I don't see that happening, and I'll believe it when I see it, because right now this team need results. They need results. That they're going to have to push through fatigue. And tired legs and listen, I think the one thing that he's been very adamant about, Frank DeBoer, is that data tracking in sports science is very important, and that's one positive change from the Tata Martino era, which sources told me was not that important, and so that you have to trust that Frank DeBoer and his coaching staff and his technical staff will look at the data and determine and probably make some close calls too. This guy is right at the limit, but we need to play him. We need a result. So I think it's still too early to just expect full rotation. And who knows, maybe he really just doesn't want to yet. And I don't know enough to really comment on, what players are coming or are close to breaking into that starting 11, because, so far he hasn't moved it around that much.
Okay, we've got a couple things from our friend Percy Herrera. First off, this is a new development, and Joseph Martinez cutting his hair off. That's a new one. That had not happened.
Oh, it's done now.
That hadn't happened as of about 3:15, 3:30 or so. Last time I saw him, he looked the same as he did.
Cincinnati gonna die.
So, as Percy says, the symbolism here is epic. Also, Percy had a comment about Pity Martinez, and I want to get into this a little bit with you, Felipe, on two fronts. So, when Pity went to River Plate, it did not start, with a bang. It took a while for him to become who he was at that club, and it was a challenge for him. He had some adversity there. I don't think it's at the same level as he's having now. I think he's much closer to breaking through here, but it is still, he hasn't settled in yet. The other one is something that I saw from Matt Doyle, and Percy said it as well. Pitty's not necessarily the type of 10 that you play through. He's not that playmaker as much as he is a guy that you play to, and you want to get that final touch or the next to final touch in the final third. You don't need him with a ton of touches. You need him with the important touches. How do you kind of look at that with PT?
I agree. I can agree with that. I think he can do both. But his DNA is, he's so quick on the ball, and I think he really does. He's the type of player that wants to draw in a defender close, and then quickly get by him and provide a service or provide a shot or provide a 1-2. But I do think he can play a little bit deeper and do that. A great comparison, though, is his ex-teammate in Juan Fernando Quintero. Now, that, even though they played together and they played in that dual 10 role, Quintero was the 10, the classic 10, the guy that would go all the way back sometimes to the center back and get on the ball and step on the ball and stop, and then, a 2-meter pass, get it back, rotate the ball, and create that way. And every once in a while, he's okay in one-on-ones. I'm talking about Quintero, but it's a different type of one-on-one ability. He uses a lot more like feints and chops to get by guys. But River Plate absolutely played through him, and PT. There were games where if Quintero was off, I remember a Copa Libertadores game where you could hear Gallardo yelling at PT to get on the ball and kind of take over that role for Quintero because, Quintero wasn't getting it done, or he was tired, or he was being man-marked. So Quintero, PT can do that. But I can agree, he is a guy that he wants to be closer to the box. He does want to be in that final third, and picking out a pass or getting a shot on goal. I think fans here in Atlanta and in MLS in general, I think you're starting to see, the venom that comes off of that left foot of his, and he can really strike a ball, and he's very confident in that left foot. I think we're starting to see that, right? He's taking free kicks that you would expect to kind of dip him into the box to your tallest defenders, or just the players that are kind of running your post, and he's trying to fool the keeper and strike it on goal. So he has that type of audacity. But yes, I think he has to figure out which 10 role is best for him in this team. I don't think Frank de Boer really, is a guy that's like, I want a classic number 10. I want a enganche, the Quintero. I just don't think that role would maybe work under a Frank de Boer. But yeah, that is the conundrum, because what this team needs is a creator, a guy that can get on the ball and come, and you have two sixes behind you, and Remedi and Nagbe that are very technical and can help you kind of create that space. So I think we'll gradually see PT Martinez, just because of his own attitude and his own desire to just take over games. He's going to get on the ball more. He's just going to have to do it. But like I said before, last night, I started to see it. I talked to a guy on Twitter. I don't remember his last name, but I think his name was Carlos. And we had a little back and forth where it's true. There were too many times where PT was back to goal, in the second half, where he was so close to the 18 that at one point he was receiving with his back to goal, and he can be stopped that way. But you could see the danger he can really create when he's running at somebody in a transition, or if he just gets his head up and can pick somebody out. I think right now he's also still getting used to the runs that Joseph makes. Right. Joseph, that was the in sync with Miguel all the time, and sometimes you think Joseph is going near post and he backs off and he goes far post. And if you don't know he's going to do that, you're going to whip it far post, and he's going near, and that's happening right now, and that's going to take time. And that's something that I think players at that level will understand each other. But, I also wonder what is their relationship like? PT isn't, and I don't mean to cause any drama, but I mean, Miguel was so outgoing, and Miguel understood Joseph's, combative personality, and PT is just a gamer, he's just a baller. I think he just wants to get out there and play, and they're going to have to find that, that rhythm and that, that balance and the sweet spot in order to create chances.
So final one for you, Felipe, the 3-4-3, what do you think so far? And do you think it's something that can work?
I think it can work. I really don't know how much, patience anyone is going to have for it. And anyone means even Frank de Boer or his players. The one thing that I will say is that defensively they're getting better. I think the back three looked strong last night. There were some blunders with some close calls as far as like clearances or just kind of building and playing out of the back. But in general, I thought that back three, even with Parkhurst playing on the right, which, everyone screamed about and sounded alarms, in Costa Rica, he looked very good there. And obviously Miles Robinson, who I will be very public and open about wanting to see more from him. And I think his technical ability and his passing ability can improve. Well, he's showing that, he wants to be that he wants to stay in that starting 11. So I think the back three in the 3-4-3 is working. LGP might be having a difficult start to the season, but he's still, a very solid defender. He's very good, technically, and he's a ball playing center back that can kind of just sit there. And they looked like they were more in sync last night. The biggest problem are, it's not the players, but it's just like the role of the flanks, and then the two central midfielders. Like, is there too much? Are they getting stretched? And I think that's still happening. I think they start well, that first 15-20 last night. Everyone looked like they were really engaged, and then just like kind of slowly as Monterrey took more control, Atlanta United kind of started to lose their shape a little bit from wide positions, central positions, and going forward. But throughout, I felt like the back three was pretty stout.
Yeah, I thought Miles Robinson especially did a good job on Funes Mori. It's a tough matchup, and I think that's why Miles was in the middle last night. That was my assumption, the way it worked out. And about his passing, go back and look at two that he had last night. I remember splitting the lines to Nagbe and then to Joseph. I think it caught Joseph by surprise that Miles picked that pass out. I think it's coming for him. I mean, I really do think he is a national team caliber center back. I think he has all the tools.
I think so, and this is what I'll say about that. I think too often in just kind of like American soccer, I guess Twitter sphere, right? Like when we see players that have potential, or American players that are showing promise and potential, or maybe they're playing in Europe already, we tend to just really over celebrate the small things that they're doing. Look at the pass he made, and look at that tackle. And it's like, okay, that's great. Like, yes, like I'm one of those guys that's always like, now keep doing that or show me more, improve, add something to your game, get stronger, get faster, get better. We can't continue to just, Miles Robinson is the best player, is the best defender. Yeah. Like so far, I think it's just a testament to a guy taking advantage of an opportunity. And that is what professional sports is all about. We don't know if he would be playing if Franco Escobar weren't injured. But guess what? Like now we're wondering if Franco Escobar is going to play. Mm-hmm. We're wondering if this shifts to a back four, if Parkey stays in. I think Parkhurst is the hard guy to take out of that lineup. And so those are decisions that Frank de Boer is going to have to make, because right now, and maybe this is exactly what he wanted. This is, Parkhurst told me, he's focusing, on the back line. Maybe this is what he wanted, to have that defense, that back three or back four if he needs it, to just be confident.
It's going to be an interesting week in the world of Atlanta United, with Cincinnati coming to town, then Monterrey, then Philadelphia, then you get 2 weeks off. I can't wait to see what it looks like on Sunday. I can't wait to hear the crowd for the celebration of last year's MLS Cup win, and I can't wait to see what Monterrey does this weekend and how it might affect Wednesday. Maybe we'll get you early in the week ahead of Wednesday next week to talk a little bit ahead of that. We'll see if we can figure that out, Felipe.
Yeah, let's do it. And listen, I think sometimes teams, like, they can't wait to get home. And I know that the supporters here in Atlanta can't wait to get into that stadium. And that could be the difference on Sunday. That could be the difference on Wednesday. So yeah, it's an exciting time despite the slow start. I think everyone's just waiting to see this team play in their home stadium.
Yeah, that feeling is such an underrated part of a team's success, and maybe it's just getting back into a comfortable building and that comfortable feeling and having your fans, giving you that support. Sometimes that can break through some of these either mental walls or physical walls or whatever it is that can push you through it. We're out of time. We've been talking for a long time, and we're going to stop talking because I'm tired. Honestly, I'm really tired. It's been a long day, and I've got to talk some more on 92.9 The Game at 8:20. So I'm going to grab a bite to eat real quick, and we're going to stop. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. So join us then. We'll preview Cincinnati. We'll get into more overreactions if you got them. Keep tweeting them at us at Soccer Down Here. We'll talk about them in the morning. Thanks for listening, everybody, and thanks for being the hardcore fans that you are. Soccer City USA is in Atlanta for a reason, because people care, and it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be upset. Just be there on Sunday and be loud and be ready to support, because I think this team needs it. With that said, mucho plata, y'all.
Mucho plata, y'all.
Mucho plata, y'all.